Um, if T agrees, we'll try a little update on what you say when you're recognizing some human characteristics coming out in your vehicle. Where you now say, "This isn't me," or what do you say? That's not me. Okay, let's say you. In other words, since me is the mind, next level mind, it couldn't be the next level mind anyhow, right? So, speaking to the vehicle, I guess you don't need to write this down because you'll hear the tape, but you can write it down if you want to. But so you're already taking that, then what would you say?
You are not me.
Huh?
You are not me.
No.
That's not you.
That's not you. What's the next?
You refuse to accept that.
Yes.
You don't need to be doing that now.
No. That your first two is right. Okay. Now the next phrase is you're going to say from wherever this is coming from. You don't need to be doing that now. Do you follow that?
Yes.
So what's the first phrase, Presley?
That's not you.
And the second one?
You don't need to be doing that.
No.
No, you don't need to accept that.
Right. And the third one, Samuel? Sooner, you remember what it was?
Wherever this is coming from, you don't need to be doing that now.
Okay, and the next one, Samuel?
You said about grown that.
What?
You said about grown that.
Yes, right. Okay, and so on. So just make those corrections. In other words, you're speaking to your vehicle as you, right? Because the trouble is something happens every time I say that, even though I think it's been okay for you to say that for a while, or I think we think that it's been okay for you to say it for a while, but there's something that goes wrong when I say that's not me, because of course it isn't me. But I don't even want because me, we always want to recognize as only the next level mind, right? So, but it isn't the vehicle either. And since you're talking to the vehicle, because only the vehicle would be responding in that way, certainly not your next level mind. So talking to the vehicle, you're saying, that's not you. Now, and we really mean that you're saying that it isn't the vehicle. It isn't your vehicle. I mean, even, and this is, you're not saying, now what I'm saying now is you're not going to necessarily say all these things, but these will be in your thought. Even though your vehicle has had some common characteristics that might have been the cause of your being a target. Do you follow that? You don't need to say that again? Even though your vehicle has had some of the characteristics that would cause your vehicle to be the target for such thoughts or actions or vibrations, still think in terms of that is not even your vehicle. It is not finding the source of that vibration is not being triggered from your vehicle, though it is passing through your vehicle, or it is attacking your vehicle from exterior source, from the world. Okay? Is that all right? Does that sound right?
Running that back through my mind, when I get to the last one, when it says, you should have outgrown that by now, it doesn't, for some reason it doesn't fit with the...
Well, the you there is not applying to the vehicle.
Oh, okay.
I see, because that follows the phrase that says, wherever this is coming from. And that you is, I'm glad you brought that up, that you is directed to wherever that's coming from. Moody?
I just wonder sometimes, like, how the like, vehicle's booger falls into this, and so I know you talked about how booger can instigate things too.
But in a sense, the booger is you can treat the booger in the same way as you would. You don't need to know when it's booger source or when it's source from the world. There's no advantage to you to know that. So the same words would apply. And since you're saying wherever that's coming from, that would certainly apply to the booger. Or any other source that might be coming from. You follow that? Somebody?
I was wondering, are we still thinking out of here too?
Well, yes, you have that as an option, that to throw that in PRN if other things aren't working as well as they should. That's just like a command that you would give something that is, you don't say that to a puppy if your nice talk to the puppy gets rid of him. If you can't get rid of him with reasonable statements, then you have to run him off because he's an interference. And you would say such things as get out of here. And that would be directed to the thought form itself. See, that's not directed to your vehicle or to anything else. It's like directed to the thought form itself. You follow that? Okay. Any Udi?
Well, I've noticed when I use that when you don't come to recognize that it's the time you should say it, the first thing that pops in my mind is just stop. It don't become like a reflex thing. I'm gonna say stop, and then I find myself saying that.
Well, you should. The thing you want to be careful here is there's nothing wrong with that feeling of stop, because it's true that at the moment that you're feeling stop, it means you've recognized something's going on. But what's wrong with saying stop? What's
It changes the way it designs.
That's right. It's not instruction. That's not the way we've given it to you. And like we say, there's nothing wrong. You're automatically feeling, oh, I've got to do something about that, or I've got to stop that. And then you go through your routine. But we still aren't going to add that. You're still not, that isn't a part of the instruction. So you want to...
It was just kind of happy naturally before.
Well, we can understand the thought coming in once you recognize something's going on, that I've got to stop that. But even that thought isn't probably going to clarify enough that it would print out. It's just a feeling. You see what we're saying? And when that feeling comes, then you're going to make a clear print. And the print is the instruction we have given to you. Sunodi?
Well, I just had a question about the second phrase, because I thought what Pasodi said was different than what I remembered.
What did she say?
I thought she said you don't need to accept that.
Oh, that is a little different.
Refuse to accept
Yes.
I guess I even thought I remembered different. But
What was it?
I'm probably wrong. I thought it was I'm not going to accept that.
That's right.
You're not going to accept
That's
that.
right. I'm not going to accept that. Was what it was. So let's make it, don't you accept that. In other words, it's a command to your vehicle, don't you accept that. Okay? Okay.
So you're
I just want to check something, I think, because for a better way to, a strong way to deal with it. It's like when I say, you should have outgrown that by now. I seem to sometimes get a reply back, quite often I get a reply back that says, well, this is my natural place, so why should I have outgrown it by now? And I usually recognize that as a booger's ploy to get me to stop, putting that out.
Well, it's not necessarily your booger. It could be your booger. It could be the source that's coming from the humans who are experiencing that are causing your vehicle to be triggered. Because they would certainly have that thought. This is, because they've been programmed that this is the natural thing for me to do now.
What you need to do is say, just do as I say.
That's right. But see, we've only given you instruction to a certain point. You take it from there. We know that from there, you're going to get all kinds of possibilities of arguments. And that doesn't mean that you don't say anything as rebuttals to those arguments just because we've given you the instruction to there. It means that you take it from there to do whatever it takes to get rid of it. You can go back and do the whole routine again. Or you can do the, oh, get out of here, or I'm not going to listen to that, or whatever it takes when you're hearing more than that. Continue to try to come. But we haven't given you the specific things to say beyond what we have given you to say. But get out of here, and I'm not going to listen to that. We can certainly give you both of those, because they would be things that you could, and you can still add to those.
Okay, they say you do as I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Add the one. So we've added 3 things that you can throw in.
Remember, when anytime the vehicle or the strain, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter who it is. But whenever it gives you an argument, you don't want to listen to it. Just stop it.
Because you're really not doing your
Stop it.
task if you hear it. What your task is, as you hear it begin, to stop the print.
It's almost like you have a split personality because it talks to you. You know, it's like, but I want to do that. I've always done it this way. What's wrong with it now? Just because you say, you know, it can go on and on and on. But what you want to do is just say, stop it. No, don't say stop it, because that's, use the phrase that we have given to you, and just don't hear it, because that's the only way you can.
Don't hear it. That's right. When an argument continues to try to come, don't hear it. Now, we didn't really come over here to give you this, but to talk about this, even though we did say that while we were here we would mention this, but we did come over to see if you had further questions about the things that we have discussed in our recent meetings. And it doesn't mean we can't talk further on this topic, but we're not limiting our discussion to this topic. If
If
you've
you
had
have questions about this, you can ask it.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you can't ask it. Professor?
I had 2, and I wrote them down. I didn't find them like
Sure, you can read them.
Well, I got to thinking about our leaving and trying to understand how humans would see it. And what I was thinking was that when Jesus left this planet, there were some who saw him as, only the son of a carpenter. And then there were others besides his disciples who knew of his power and his abilities to do the things that he did. And so those people could see him as being an extraordinary person. They could actually realize that there was something more to him than just a human being. And so then it made me wonder, because these vehicles have known people in the world, that how will they view our leaving? How will they see us?
It'd be nice to know.
Well, I tell you, if it's anything like we expected, the only reason it was slow then, and the only reason that some thought it was, or might have said, it wasn't anything special about it, he was just a carpenter's son or whatever, is because the media back in those days was very slow. It took years. As a matter of fact, T and I are very suspicious, and this doesn't amount to anything. We're saying this lightly. We're not making any big issue of it. But we're very suspicious at times that whether or not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote those accounts, or whether or not Jesus didn't dictate them to them. But they wouldn't have meant anything had Jesus written them. But because people don't, it's what someone else says about someone that means more to people than when someone is barking their own view. Do you follow what we're saying? And it's altogether possible that he might have dictated those things, or he might have dictated those to someone else, and they ended up with those scraps of dictation and wrote. But there's too much similarity there. There's no way in the world that those four individuals could have written the things that they wrote had they not come from the same source or another source that had a lot of collaboration and working together, even though one or two of them might have had an aspect of their account that others didn't have. But the point is, back in those days, the media, they didn't have television, they had very slow newspapers, and those accounts didn't really get out for years. I mean, don't forget that Jesus left when the disciples were all young men. And these accounts were written when they were old men. No, or these accounts were exposed when they were old men. And so then after they're being exposed, then years after that, that began to build up. And probably some who, when Jesus left, thought that he was just a cultist, but even though they had different terminology at that time, and thought, just some spiritual person trying to make a name for himself. Had they seen him leave, the picture would have been entirely different. Now, we feel very strongly that our leaving will be witnessed, and which would change the whole story. Because the way, even though some humans will say, well, that beats all the hype I've ever seen. That beats that somebody has really pulled a number, to have had maybe photographs and all these eyewitnesses. But even we're sure that some will choose to discount it because if they can't, it'll be too difficult for them to accept. But the civilization in this hemisphere has grown, for the most part, to ones who will believe almost anything if they can see it. And if they see it and they know who it was, which they will learn, but that may take a little time. It may take a little time for them to learn who it was.
Well, you know how I've joked many times about when I get back, a lot of changes are going to be made before we come back here again. And I think when Jesus was here, I believe Jesus probably said, or whoever was working with him probably said, there are going to be a lot of changes before the next death happens. And because of the amount of time that it took for us to get to where we are now, or not us, but the garden. And I believe this is why television came in, and all this news media, the way it can be satellites up in the heavens so that things can be transmitted immediately.
And every poor family in the world who can trade their shoes for a TV set can see news media. The point we're making is we feel like the news media is also kept television free. I mean that the next level has kept television free so that, and used all these things to have TV a very common way to witness things. Go ahead.
Plus the fact that time, I feel like things will move very quickly once we leave. So that because the garden may be at a spot where something can move quickly, whether it is going to be some kind of catastrophe or something good will happen, which I feel like something good will happen because I can't in my logical mind figure out why they would want to destroy something and start over again. Or because I don't think this garden is that bad. It has a lot of baddies in it, but I don't think the overall picture, the individuals are bad. There's still a lot of good, too much to waste. Like science, for instance. Science has more knowledge now than I believe they've ever had. I don't care what they say about Atlantis.
And of course, the next level has fed them a lot, and they have picked up on it.
Medicine is more advanced now than ever before, and in a sense, the way humans see other people are, in a sense, a little bit more advanced. In other words, they care more about each other. I think not everybody now, because we're not talking about the everybody as a group. We're still talking about individual, but you weigh them out, and the percentages probably are better than the ones who are the baddies. Does that make sense? You understand what I mean? In other words, I think the good outweighs the bad. You can drive along the street.
Even though the bad may be
Pretty bad.
larger numbers, even.
Now, it doesn't mean that the good is next level good. You know what I mean? They're good for humans, and it's true they still have to overcome a lot of humanness, but that can be eradicated very quickly. As soon as the next level decides to do it. But you can see goodness if you look for goodness. Now, the ones of you who go out on out into your out-of-craft task, I believe you can see at least one kind thing that somebody does to somebody else. And we're not looking for the bad things, we're looking for the good, because we are measuring the goodness, so to speak, even though it sounded like before we were talking about the bad things. Can you understand it? In other words, I'm talking right now about the good things. You can drive along the street like today. This evening earlier we were going home back to our craft, and on the side of the road there was a lady, and her car had broken down. She was by herself. And two cars stopped with male vehicles in it. Now, it might be that they just stopped because they saw a female vehicle on the side of the road who needed help. Or they could have been somebody she called, but there wasn't a place for her to call. So, in a sense, those people could have stopped to help her because they saw that she was a helpless female who didn't know how to start a car and so on. So, in my mind, that's kind of good for them when they want to get home and have their bottle of beer, and put their feet up on the ottoman and watch the news, and they will stop and help somebody in this heat and so on. Now, that's a form of goodness in my mind, because they care about helping that person. Now, this is the kind of goodness we're talking about. Just like, I don't know if y'all read this, Ann Landers, whatever it is, in the morning paper, where this man said he was spanking his child because child wouldn't go to bed. It was late at night, and so the child started yelling. And shortly after that, there was a knock on the door, and the policeman and somebody from the child abuse center came to his door to check up on why the child was yelling.
And the man was yelling too at the child.
Right. Now, that's good. Even though the man said, well, the child needed to be spanked, and what am I supposed to do when he needs the spanking? And in a sense, it's you don't.
What he's saying is good is that people cared enough to act upon it, instead of just saying, "Oh well, that's the Joneses over there, and you know how they are."
But just ignore the fact that the child is yelling. Well, it turned out it wasn't bad because they didn't press charges against the man. But the thing of it is, it was good that someone cared
That's
enough.
right. And he'll think twice before he's quite so loud and quite so uncontrolled next
Probably
time.
put the child in the closet someplace. But at least he will be, there are individuals who care. Now, child abuse is really making the headlines now because it is really abused. I mean, children have really been abused, and it's now coming out, like these daycare centers. I don't think anybody would ever suspect that a daycare center would abuse a child in that way. I know this vehicle wouldn't. And to find out about it, it's almost as appalling as a hospital of abusing a patient. I think that's about the worst thing you can do is abuse a patient in a hospital because they're helpless. And a little child is just as helpless as a sick person.
And so vulnerable.
That's right. And so, but anyway, getting back to what I was talking about, I feel like things will move very, very quickly once we leave. And it's because it's been set up that way. And whether or not people will recognize who we are, it really doesn't matter. Because it's the vehicle who wants the recognition. The next level mind couldn't care less.
Well, now you don't care whether they will.
No, that's
Right.
what I'm saying. In other words, they may see you all walking in a straight line, like in Close Encounters, with all the lights and the music and everything, you know. We don't know. But the thing of it is, I firmly believe, and I think Doe does too, that people will see it, and there will be some way to prove that it's right, even though people will not believe it totally afterward.
In other words, we feel that the viewing, well, let me go back. Can I go back a second?
Sure.
It was very impressive. It was an impressive drama. And when Jesus and his students were doing what they were doing for this crucifixion and earthquake, and then to put out these books and to send his disciples while they were still there, to send them all over the place, preaching that he had gone. And do you follow what we're saying? That was very impressive. And even the martyrdom or the crucifixion was impressive. The martyrdom of all the disciples, with maybe the exception of John, was very impressive. Now, but the lower forces moved in very quickly to make martyrdom not impressive at all. It doesn't mean anything anymore to be crucified or to die for a cause. So the lower forces quickly saw that martyrdom amounts to nothing. People, for almost any stupid cause in some places of the world now, will go and martyr themselves. So it's lost its effectiveness. And sometimes when you hear a preacher say, and he died for our sins, you think, well, so what? You know, and is it because people die for causes all the time? You know, it's like, well, that's not enough. That's because of what the lower forces did to that crucifixion and that martyrdom and all. Now, we feel like the drama that will see that this word gets out. If you want just get down to it, we'll get right down to it. Back there, they had these things to go out and preach, and then they had a follow-up of those writings that were exposed later in the years of the disciples. And those writings then were passed, and little churches start, and then that just spread all over the globe to where you find it now 2,000 years later, even though it is very warped. But we feel that when we leave, the fact that they will see us leave, they won't settle until they know who that was that left, and who that was that got up, left this surface and got on that spacecraft and left. We don't know if whether the government and the military and everything would rope off the area and make it top secret for 5 years until everybody was demanding to know what it was they were hiding. But it'll be set up to be a significant thing. And in the meantime, all these rumors will start about who it was that actually left. And I'm sure those whom your vehicles were attached to in the world will have their part in saying who that was. And goodness, and they'll be thinking, I didn't think that could have possibly been true. I thought it was real neat that Bo and Pete were teaching them to be good little people and help them get off all those bad habits and things, but I didn't really think that they would actually go someplace or actually leave at some place go. Now, we believe that when that incident has occurred and it is past, that they will not stop until every tape you have and everything they can find in your craft and in our craft is ciphered through and sorted out and tried to realize what was early and what was later and what had precedent over and what outdated this and all, and it has to be. This will all come out. In the meantime, the churches will have their version of how this must have been Satan, and because many of them will have to, because they'll be the prime target of the lower forces quickly coming in to discredit this. But we know that it will be done, or we feel very strongly that it will be done in a way that, with modern day technique, that it will be very, very, we'll almost have to say, well, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they have those films. I don't know how people took those pictures. I don't know how those million people or 2 million people in the Metroplex of Fort Worth, Dallas, say they saw what they saw. I don't know any of that, because it must have been some, big swamp gas. And something made the people in the area think they saw people actually getting up on there. And if it was, it had to be of the lower forces, because I know it had nothing to do with God.
Well, they have to admit that they can't admit that it's God or Jesus because they didn't go.
That's right, and because it would really throw a kink in what they believe. It's like this. Last night, there was a scientist from some university in Washington, D.C., talking about the quasars. And of all people to bring on to debate quasars with, it was Jerry Falwell. And he really fell well. I mean, his logic just wasn't there. But when you're an evangelist, you don't really have to have any logic. If you're good at quoting, and you can, whenever you get uncomfortable, you can quote what seems to be the closest thing to matching the argument, and it's supposed to be satisfactory because you're not supposed to try to refute biblical quotations. But this funny thing was, the scientist who was talking about space and quasars and so forth said, I find no contradiction with what scientists and astronomers are now beginning to learn with a concept of God. In other words, the scientist was recognizing that the basis of Falwell's and Christians, the basis of what they're all about, is not being, the scientists were saying that's not being threatened at all by what astronomers are finding to be the case. But the one thing that disturbs the religious a lot is the concept that scientists have of the Big Bang. The explosion when the universe, according to them, when the universe happened, even though that can't compute. If none of them can recognize one thing that you all clearly recognize, we've never heard one scientist, Sagan, none of them, we've never heard any of them begin to realize a very simple little thing, and that is that humans are designed with a limiting comprehension. In other words, they're designed in a way that they can't stretch their thought beyond time and space. They can't think of what was before the beginning. You know, that whoop, suddenly that brain just says, but there can't be anything before the beginning. You see what we're saying? So they can't, suddenly there's a short circuit and you don't know what to do with it. But no one has ever thought that humans were designed with limitations. Like we have told you that Next Level, we think, does quite a few things that they can get away with doing without human observation, because your eyes aren't fast enough, because this level of humans has not developed well enough, close enough to the next level, to be refined enough to be aware of a lot of things that go on the next level. Do you follow that? We never hear any scientists talk about down the line when humans are advanced enough that they can perceive of greater understandings, have enlarged systems of logic, or where they can realize that they might have been created with restrictions of comprehension or ability. Do you follow that? They can't think that way. It's just like even the religious, like Falwell said last night, well, you've got to know that God, the highest creation that God created was man. And yet, where does that fit in what you know? You know that how could someone think that way? And yet, don't you realize that all of those religious individuals out there, no matter what faith they come from, they think that the highest thing that God created was man. There's nothing beyond man but God, and there's only one Him. So therefore, the highest thing He created, they can't, it stops there. They can't get into thoughts, well, let's see, where did He come from, and how did He make Himself, and what happened before He started making Himself? Who was there to make Him? And things like that, which shows, when you start thinking things like that, it shows that your computer is a kindergarten computer. That it has no capacity to comprehend beyond the programming that it's been given. Now the Next Level has given it this programming at this stage, so that even the most intelligent scientists or intelligent people in medicine or anything else, they are limited to what the Next Level has given them, plus they're limited to the level of their interpretation of what the Next Level has given them. But the Next Level very carefully does not feed them more than they can handle. They don't have the capacity. It's only after you begin to overcome all these characteristics that the vehicle will in generations evolve to be something that will have a greater capacity for comprehension than it now has. Can you all follow those things? He said when we spoke a little bit the other night about quasars that maybe some of you don't have any idea of what we meant by the term quasar. And it's just a term that astronomers have given to a source of light that they don't really know what the composition of, but it's like a ball of light or a source of light at what human scientists now consider to be at the extremities of the universe. Now, here again, that all of a sudden puts kink in my brain, but that's the way they have to think about it, at the extremities of the universe. Now, you say, well, what do you mean by that? And it means that as they have developed telescopes and abilities to perceive distance, the quasars are the things that they observe coming from the greatest distance of anything, and that they are a light source. And there are lots of quasars. They are a light source that is many, many, many times greater a light source than any star. And the sun being a star, you can imagine that they are very, very strong light sources. Even though scientists realize that the quasars that they are now observing with their extremely advanced telescopes, and they are so many, let's say they're 15, 18 million light years. You know what we mean by that? Like how far light can travel in that given space of time. If they are like 15 to 18 million light years away, then that means that it took that long for the light to get from that source to their observation, their capacity to observe it. Therefore, what they're now observing might have long since been dead, not existed any longer, or and other things could have been in existence and at greater distances and even more significant than quasars, but the light from them has not yet reached a proximity to Earth where they could be viewed, just because of distance. Now, we feel that the next level can move in space. Actually, not in spirit form, but in bus form, in spacecraft form, that they can move at speeds that exceed light. That they can not only move in speeds that exceed light, or the speed that light can travel, but that many of the objects that they would travel in also have some shell around them that spins, similar to like when you were a kid, you spun a top on the floor and it went so fast that you couldn't see what it was. Now, and if it was a certain color or a certain mixture of all colors, that at certain speeds it like disappears. It like mixes with whatever is around it and you can't see it. Here again, partially because of the limits of the human eye capacity to see, plus this neat little technique of having a shell around the spacecraft that can spin and can revolve to speeds that would block out its visibility. Now, if the next level occupying that spacecraft gets an instruction that the spacecraft be slow down and go to a place where it can be seen to see how people might react to it, then of course they would do such a thing as that. They would slow that down and they would be visible, and they would do it in a way that was where they were protected. We think that they certainly know how to not be detected by radar, that they have the capacity to not to be detected, that the alloys and the products that surround the spacecraft are made of things that our mechanical devices would not detect unless they choose to be detected. And that's how many times they can be detected and then suddenly they aren't detected. And then suddenly they're detected again. Now these things we feel are very elementary to the next level. That what I'm telling you and what we tell you about things like this is just a tiny, inaccurate smattering of how developed the next level is, and of how in relationship to where this planet and its advanced humans in their capacity for scientific understanding, how the two are so distant from each other. Do you follow that? And if you understand that, then it would be no feat for the next level to come in here tonight, should they choose, and hover over your pool. They could do it with probably no one knowing it. They could probably also immediately bring up a storm and fog significant enough that they could even slow down enough that they would be detected, or they could be in a condition where they could be detected, but they would use other elements to prevent. They certainly can control atmosphere enough. It would be nothing for them to control the atmosphere around them. And or they could set it up so that it was the clearest night. It was clear that anything could be clear, so that everyone could detect and see that they were there. They probably have devices where they could send a pitch, even not discernible by your mind, or that you wouldn't know was being sent, that could put your whole neighborhood in a momentary standstill, where they don't even know that they stood there for 30 minutes while you all ran to the back. Anytime they are detected, it's because they have either somebody was careless or they intended to be detected. Do you follow that? And they know how to protect themselves, but their capacity for doing things is, you'll really be glad to be out of your ignorant case, because you knew these things. These things that we're now talking about, your minds know. The strength that your minds have developed from this task, it did not know. The kind of strength that it is getting from this task, it did not know. And you'll go back a lot. You'll have a lot of muscle that you did not have before this task.
What Doe is doing is refreshing your memory. Okay? Because it's just the beginning of refreshing your memory, which whenever you grow to be, not grow, but whenever you awaken more, going on a spaceship won't be any different than it would be getting into a vehicle to go to an out-of-craft task or to go on a spy run or something like that. It may be halfway a little frightening to you right now, or exciting or something like that, but when you awaken more, it won't be that way. It will be very normal for you. It will seem abnormal to do the other things that are on this planet, but not totally so much that you can't do it, but it will become, you will recognize it as you do it, as this seems strange to be doing this. Like it seems strange for us at time when it's time to go down at night. It seems strange for us to be going down at night. We think, oh, we're sleepy and we'll go down, and as soon as we go down, it's like bump. The eyes are wide awake and the brain is awake, and it's just like, well, what do we do now? It's just it's.
Then your vehicle says, "How many nights of this do you think I can take if you're staying awake all night?"
And the funny part, it's been able to take it pretty well,
Another thing on this, and Presto would definitely get you to your second question. We'll get to it in a second. It would, just as a human can now they've developed a laser that is actually not just, it's more than light. It actually carries things. I mean, humans have developed something that can carry particles just like a beam, and on that beam, particles could move. What we're saying is, and that's humans in a primitive condition. knowing how to do that. So would it be anything to the next level to beam an escalator for you to get on the spacecraft? Do you see? It would be nothing for them to just turn a switch on and something moves out, even though by human standards of analysis of metallic qualities, it may be something that they can't even see because the molecular structure may not be similar to the qualities of what they call metals and on this particular planet. So next level is a neat garden, which brings up something that a fallacy in what Erodi was saying the other day, and why we don't want you thinking that way as far as the humans who even make it to the next level would one day grow to be where I am. Let's propose a thought. Let's say that just for sake of understanding, that here's a dot, and this is where everybody begins. And then, but from that dot, there are all these lines that go out 360 degrees. Now, let's say out here somewhere is a circle where all those, no matter which line they're going on, reach beginner membership in the kingdom of heaven. Well, here might be one that Erodi took out here. So is necessarily true that a human, when he reaches here, is he going to be where Erodi was? No. He would have same laws of conduct, the same etiquette, as far as getting along with other members in the kingdom of heaven. But he might have even a vehicle. He might have gone in a route of preparation so that he is capable of quite different things than this one up here is capable of. Even though these can all work in harmony and can all have clear communication and the same level of courtesy toward each other. But they wouldn't begin to think that they all knew what the others knew any more than the physicist knows the same thing as the violinist. They just don't. It's the same thing. And yet the physicist can have exactly the same etiquette code as the violinist, and can sit on a panel and work together and study even the physics of the violin. Do you follow what we're saying? And if you're thinking that way, then it's too narrow to think. It's too small thinking to think that humans who make it to the next level are going to end up at one time where you are. The only thing they're going to end up with is having reached, those who survive and make it to the next level will reach an entrance to the next level, as you reached. That would be the only parallel that you could make. And when they reached it, it had certain etiquette requirements. Can you follow that thinking? What is your second question?
Well, as a result of my having this first question on my mind and thinking that in order for them to relate to us and seeing this event take place, that it might go through their minds that they separated from their families and they tried to become something better. And with that in mind, then I got thinking that maybe the next step is that the manual that you're writing and the idea of going to Houston is really a beginning idea for humans to after we leave, to begin to think in terms of breaking away from their roots, and then...
No, mistake. I don't want to cut you off too soon, but I think we could cover that without and still answer your question. First of all, you're not realistic when you're thinking, when they see you go, it's going to be some time before they relate to the idea that you left things to go do something better. And when they read these tapes, they're going to realize that we are saying to them, this is not the way you reach the kingdom of heaven, by leaving everybody as you did. That was a task for you as a student because you had a job to do. That how they are going to eventually evolve to the kingdom of heaven is by changing all their habits and ways and evolve to less primitive concepts of multiplicity and how to live with each other and how to get along and all that kind of thing. Do you follow what we're saying? But it would be wrong. It would be a sidetrack. And some will probably do it. Some will probably get hold of something and say if they got to leave on the spacecraft because they, in other words, that would be out of ignorance because they didn't listen to enough tapes. You follow what we're saying? And they would say, if they did it, then I'm going to do that too. I'm going to go find me a group and we're all going to go be celibate and say bye-bye to our families and all. You remember some time ago we said that is inappropriate for them.
Right. And I guess I thought the concept that we were talking about going to Houston was that we were sort of putting out those ideas that you had to become independent and not rely on anyone else, and you would have a sex partner.
Well, yes, but that's only because that's where humans are supposed to grow to become. In other words, we're trying to raise them to a higher level of consciousness where they perform in a more refined way and more like members of the next level would like for them, how they would like them to perform. But it doesn't mean that they will break away from their family. The structure of the family will change, just like it's
That's
been
right.
in the process of changing for the past 12 years, where children don't know who their father is, half of them. And there are a lot of single parents raising children, where women are just having children because they want to have a child to raise, and they will go and have either some kind of
A test tube baby.
test tube baby or whatever method they have now. In other words, the idea of mommy, daddy, family.
And that mom and daddy are capable of being teachers. You know, that's they're gonna, in other words, the way they're gonna leave is different than the way you left. The way they're going to break their ties with their roots is going to be different. They're going to be breaking their ties because they're tired of getting gonorrhea. That's one reason. You know what we're saying? And they're going to have to say there's got to be something else than this addiction that I have for sensuality. And there's got to be something else when I see every gal in my graduating class, this girl says, every gal in my graduating class couldn't wait to have a baby. And now I'm seeing them 5 years later and they all wish they didn't have one. Something's wrong. And so they start thinking, is it possible that mamas don't automatically make good training teachers for young human individuals? In other words, this is the way they're going to break from their roots. They're going to break from their roots, hopefully on a less spiritual basis, because it will be a more realistic breaking from their roots. If they break on a more spiritual basis, it has too much fantasy with it, and they're going to have to realize that the kingdom of heaven is not a religion. The kingdom of heaven is a place that has individuals, and it's more real than this world, and not real in the religious sense. Religion is a thing that is permitted as a primitive condition in order to have humans look up towards something better. But there comes a time when it's not permitted, because it's time for them to outgrow it. You follow that?
Now, on the going to Houston thing, I don't believe that was on tape, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
Did we? I thought we had turned the tape on afterward. But is there some in there about what we were designing to do while we were using that as an example? Any other?
I think it's on there, but I think, I don't know, from my listening to it, it's just, you can tell it's just being used as.
Yes, it's used in a.
Well, see, what we were talking about was, and I'll try to explain it a little better. It was trying to separate the ones who want to move ahead from the ones who do not want to move ahead. And if you don't want to move ahead, then you don't go to Houston. If you want to stay where you are, then you stay in Dallas. This was the thing. It wasn't breaking away from family. It wasn't doing what you all did. Now, Dove said something that I want to add to, because since this is on tape, I want to clarify. He said that you all did what you are doing because you were students. Yes, you were students, but you were also members of the next level coming in here doing this task.
That's what I meant.
But you were students from the next level.
That's
Now,
right.
this-
Your classroom is from the next level.
Right. In other words, this is a classroom that was from people, from individuals from the next level. Minds from the next level are here on this garden having a classroom. And it is not anyone from the human kingdom in this classroom.
Right.
Okay? Now this is just for the
There's
record.
no one in this classroom that is a native of Earth. These are all ones who came from another evolutionary condition, what humans would call the kingdom of heaven, to do a task to help the humans on this planet. Now, I'll tell you something that's very good brain twister, or mind bender, whatever you want to, however you want to think about it. And that is when you realize that we believe that even though we talk about how primitive the condition of humans are, we also believe that humans could listen and listen and listen to these tapes. And that they have grown to a condition where after a period of osmosis and saturation, they could actually begin to see what is ahead of them. And actually begin to accept the idea that the kingdom of heaven has sent people at times to help them get there, those that want to move forward. In other words, a lot of this that we talk about, they're capable, if they want to listen that many times to those tapes, of making adjustments and realizing the reality of the kingdom of heaven, what kind of place it is to send people to do what you're doing, to give them, to upgrade them, and to bring them stepwise motions toward once reaching their kindergarten in the kingdom of heaven. Those that want to get there. He said something a moment ago about the good is the stronger, and or the good is the, I don't remember the term that you used when you were talking about now that everything is exposed, we see so much bad going on, but we also see some good going on, and the good is certainly more significant. When it's hard to talk about this without the terms being abused or misused, but when the next level is close, things are exposed, things also grow very fast. And bad things grow very fast, and good things grow very fast. And it's like the flowering plants are trying to survive in a garden that the weeds and also are growing very, very fast in, and the type of plants that would attempt to even strangle out the blooming plants because they have a resentment toward them or jealousy toward them. Do you follow what we're saying? Because these things are moving very, very fast. Now, and this is also why we have talked about Houston, and Dallas. When T said the separation, because people are going to have to, even though we've used this little illustration of Houston, Dallas, and we're not proposing that some committee start a program to evacuate everybody to Houston and send only the ones that are going there, and also making all the prisons come to Dallas. But we are proposing that after we leave, that people as individuals separate themselves from the weeds. That the blossoming plants cannot grow to be strong blossoming plants if they do not find the company of other blossoming plants, and make their primary existence with them. That they will be compromised, their whole effort would constantly be compromised if they stay in a garden that is just overridden with the weeds and the crabgrass and the birds and the plants that would ruin the blossoming plants. Think about stuff.
Okay? Think about this, because remember, this is a step to help you to awaken. And don't receive it in the way that it's fantasizing.
No.
Because I'm talking about what Doe was talking about earlier.
Right. We're not saying that anything we talked about is accurate, but we know that everything that we have talked about is accurate as far as what the next level does and is capable of doing. Far exceeds anything we could have talked about, and we know that, and even you know that. And like T said, what we're trying to do is help bring some of that consciousness back into your. Good. The light's right there.
It was funny because in my quiet moments lately, when I've been thinking about spacecraft, I had this feeling, and it's like when you're trying to remember something that you know has happened, and you're putting the pieces together, and you've almost got it put together, and I keep getting that feeling, and I can't figure out what it is, but it's on the other side of that feeling. But it's ever since the last couple of meetings when we've been talking about spacecrafts. I can't get past that, though. I don't know what to...
Little Pop.
Yes. Well, and this maybe we brought a few pieces of puzzles tonight, and but it's good for you to have that consciousness of some more consciousness is just right around the corner from me, and I feel like if I could only, break the membrane.
Sometimes when I'm sitting, just when I'm not even aware that my mind is working, in other words, it's just thinking, thoughts will come into my mind that I've never had before, which is mostly like next level work, and then I will become aware of it, aware that I'm thinking about it, and then it will disappear. It's almost like the only way I can think about it is when I'm not aware that I'm thinking.
Right.
So
otherwise, it has to play hide and seek. It's
right.
like, uh-oh, you've found me
But
out.
it's always happened this way, but it's never been as conscious. In other words, when we were back in campground, if I would see something immediately, I would stop my vehicle from seeing it. My mind, because I wasn't supposed to be seeing that right now. Anyway, it's getting closer, we think. I hope so.
Turn it off.